Hi, I'm Alice Myatt. I'm the Associate Director for the Center for Writing and Rhetoric, and I teach first-year writing classes. I also teach advanced composition. And prior to my work here at the University of Mississippi, I taught various composition classes such as document design and technical writing classes, business writing. So I've had the opportunity to teach in both hybrid and online settings. I've taught first-year writing courses in the hybrid format, and I've also taught the advanced composition totally online. And one of my interests is in creating community between students who take online classes, but also establishing a sense of community and dialogue between the student and me. When I'm teaching face-to-face, one of the things that's important for me is to get to know students on a personal level. And I wanted to find ways of doing that even when I teach in a fully online setting. So I've learned to make use of some of the components that are in Blackboard and also of some of the technologies that are available to us and foster developing that sense of community, but also giving students lots of experience in writing in multiple formats, multiple modes, and for multiple purposes and audiences. One tool that I really like to use is the personal writing journal that's in Blackboard. I make this an assignment. I will provide students with a prompt, although I tell them that because of the nature of the personal writing journal, they can set something up that I'm the only person reading it. They can write what they want to write in it, so often it becomes a place where we can dialogue back and forth about what's concerning the student. As I said, I also give them prompts so that they can respond, and I find this especially helpful in getting them to reflect on the value of each assignment that they complete. Another tool that I like to use is something that I'm still refining, but I call it the blog party. And this riffs off of the concept or the notion of a block party where people who live in a neighborhood may get together and exchange. Often they come together and they bring their best food, or they might have some other social event going on. And so a blog party is started by one person. I have one person who's designated as the host. I put students into small groups. The host begins the blog party by bringing some examples of blogs that he or she particularly likes. And they have to explain why they like it and its value to them in their work. And then the other members of the blog party come and they also bring their favorite blogs. And so then it becomes a discussion of what blogging is, what are the characteristics of it. I start off by sending students out to look at a website that has the best practices for blogging. There are other ways of building community, such as using discussion boards to have them introduce themselves. So again, what I found is that there are ways that will facilitate community building in a totally online setting. And it's really rewarding to see that community growing as students begin understanding that they can form these connections both with each other and with me over the course of a semester.
I'm Michael Barnett, Assistant Professor of Lighting Design in the Department of Theater Arts, and I taught my Theater 201 Appreciation of the Theater course as an online course this past summer. As part of my online class, we were able to introduce many new technologies to my teaching. We used Google SketchUp, which allowed the students to be able to actually draft and create their own theater spaces, their own blocking exercises for as though they were directing a show. They were able to design their own spaces in terms of the scenic design and how the actors would move through the space. This was a wonderful tool for the students because it actually got them engaged in the process. Instead of simply listening to me talk about how a director goes about planning these things out or how a scenic designer works, they were able to use this tool in the online environment to create this three-dimensional world themselves and fully manipulate it, and then share it with me and with the other members of the class to get feedback, and so they could see artistically how the other members of the course responded to the material and how that differed from their own, and which was a wonderful opportunity to see how you can have a set material and every single person is going to interpret it differently. In addition to Google SketchUp, we also used a program called Twine. This is a storytelling interface. It's entirely web-based, very much like a choose-your-own-adventure type model. And so what I did with that program was I used it to try to lead the students through a day in the life of an actor. I was trying to express to them that an actor isn't just a person who memorizes some lines, gets up and plays on stage and then goes home at night, but in fact that it's a a very grueling profession, and that even when you do everything right, sometimes you fail. So they would go through and make their choices throughout the narrative, and regardless of what choice they made, most of them would end up actually not getting the job. There was only one correct path, and they'd have to go back and start over and feel probably some level of the frustration that an actor would feel as they're trying to break into the industry. In addition to Twine, I had many other web-based tools that I would use. There was a website that was found that allowed the students to go in and do costume design work, basically an online paper doll type program where I gave them a selection from the play Macbeth and asked them to go in and actually do a costume design for the character of Lady Macbeth. The discussion boards on Blackboard were invaluable in tracking the thoughts of the students throughout the material, throughout our lectures that had been previously recorded, about the work that they were doing in SketchUp, and the discussions often would carry on much longer than it would in a typical classroom. They would carry on, some of them carried on for a number of weeks, well after we had moved on to a different unit. So the discussion tools were excellent and really enabled me to have a stronger connection to these students, which was an initial concern of mine, was how would I interface with the students, how would I know and be able to track their progress beyond just the grades, but actually understanding what it is that they were taking from the class, and those discussion tools were wonderful. One of the things that was really exciting for me in this class, and I had previously taught this course as a hybrid class, was the way that I'm able to integrate new information instantaneously using Blackboard. I could find an article in the New York Times talking about the state of theater in America, or I could get a speech from the head of the NEA talking about funding cuts to our industry and to all arts around the country. And I could share that with the students pretty much instantaneously, which is really exciting and wonderful. It has rejuvenated my teaching experience and really made it a lot of fun, both for myself and I believe for the students as well.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Schmidt. I'm writing instructor for the Department of Writing and Rhetoric at Ole Miss. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the technology that I use in my classroom to promote more of a social presence online. I've been teaching online for several years, and the trend now is to have more of a social presence in the classroom so that the students are aware that there's a teacher in the class and that there's active participation. And a tool that I found that I use in multiple ways is called Jing, J-I-N-G. It's a free TechSmith tool, and it's a video audio cast. So with this particular piece of software, you can, for example, I've used it by pulling up a student essay, and I can actually record my comments and edit or make line item comments at the same time. There's a limit of 5 minutes, which is perfect because that way it keeps the comments that you make short and precise. And the feedback from the students has been very positive. Another use I've found for this technology is to orient the students to the course. So I make an 5-minute audio video cast of the Blackboard screen, and then I talk through how they would find the syllabus, where they would post their discussions, where they would upload assignments, and they can actually see in live time how that works. And it gives them also a sense of a presence of me in the classroom.
My name is Stephen Davis. I'm a chemistry professor here at the University of Mississippi, and the department has never offered freshman chemistry online before, and so this past summer I was asked to try to develop an online version of our freshman chemistry class. So there are a couple of problems with doing this that we had to overcome. One is that, freshman chemistry has a lot of math in it and models that we use to describe nature. And so how do we get students to, how do we convey this information to students through an online version of a class? It's not like we could ask students to read a book and then discuss it online afterward, because students aren't very fluent in mathematics as freshmen, and most of the language that we use to describe nature is mathematics. And so there had to be a better way. So I could stand in front of a camera and lecture for 50 minutes right on the board, but eventually I came across a piece of equipment called LiveScribe pen, which is just a pen that allows me to write on special paper. And the paper records the motions of the pen, which then saves my voice as I talk and write as a PDF file. And that PDF file can be then viewed through Acrobat Reader by the student, or it can be uploaded to a website and then viewed through the web later by the student. So what I did was I recorded my lectures while writing on this paper, just like I was writing on the board, and record them in like 5-10 minute increments so the student could easily download the videos on anything that would run a web browser. So they could use their computers, their laptops, their phones, or any device like an Apple iPad. So in this way, a student could just see small chunks of a lecture, and they could see worked out problems and examples, especially the math steps. I could describe each step as I went through in words and both in writing, so the students could get an idea of how to work problems. So chemistry is basically problem solving. It's not just memorizing facts and figures. So a student could easily see my steps as I went through and worked problems to understand the material. And from student input for this first try for online freshman chemistry, they really liked the course because they could stop and start these PDF files at will, so they could go through. If they had a question, they could stop it, and do a little research on their own, or work through problems, or try to go from one line of math to the next on their own. Then they could restart the video and continue on with the problem. And because it was in short segments, 5 to 10 minutes long, they didn't have to sit and watch a 50-minute video at one time, taking a big chunk of time out of their day. They could do it in pieces, riding the OUT bus to and from school, or they could have a job, and on a lunch break they could view 5-10 minutes of videos, and so they could do it in smaller chunks instead of having to outlay a whole 50 minutes at one time to work in their summer schedules. I had students who would upload the course or front load the course, or backload the course depending on their summer schedules. I had one student who had an internship scuba diving in Belize, mapping out the coastline, and so he was able to front load the course and take his tests early so that he could go to Belize and fulfill his internship. That wouldn't have been possible with an in-class type of lecture, but an online class offers students this great flexibility. Another problem we had was, how can students ask questions? And since most of the questions are algebra based, how could they could email me, but it's hard for students to write algebra equations just with text email. And so we came up with two ways that seemed to work. The most primitive way was to use Skype, and a student could sit in front of his computer and me in front of mine, and he could write out his questions on a piece of paper if they were math-based and hold it up to the camera, and then I could write a solution and talk and hold my solution up to the camera. But a more convenient way, I believe, is called Scribbler, and both of these are free, Skype and Scribbler. Scribbler, instead of using a video camera with voice, you have voice and a whiteboard, and the student and I can both write on the same whiteboard, so they can use their mouse and write equations, and I can write equations back while we're both talking to each other. So it's almost a face-to-face meeting, like I'm writing on the board and the student's writing on the board, and we can discuss and work on problems in that manner. So the students really liked the class. They liked the online nature of the class that gave them the flexibility to work their summer schedules around summer jobs and other things. I only had a couple of students that were actually in Oxford. Most of them were, between Texas and North Carolina. And so we got proctors for their tests, and they were able to do it all from home, and I think it worked out really well.